Seattle mornings are often shrouded in fog, but this morning was unusually clear and bright. Emily Hartwell was preparing breakfast for her son Jacob in the kitchen of her 12th-floor apartment in a high-rise building. She worked as a principal architect at a well-regarded local architectural firm, and many of the commercial and residential buildings she had designed were featured in architectural magazines, demonstrating her considerable skill. "Mom, what day is it today?" 7-year-old Jacob sat down at the dining table, rubbing his sleepy eyes. With brown hair and large eyes that resembled his mother's, he was the most precious person in Emily's life. Since losing her husband to cancer 3 years ago, mother and son had walked through life together as a team. "It's Tuesday. Do you remember you have piano lessons after school today?" Emily gently stroked her son's hair as she placed pancakes in front of him. Jacob was musically gifted, particularly excelling at piano far beyond other children his age. "Yes. The teacher said she'd teach me a new song," Jacob answered happily, taking a bite of his syrup-covered pancakes. Emily's cell phone rang. The screen displayed, "Mom. Good morning, Mom." "Emily, good morning. How are you doing?" Her mother Margaret's voice rang out bright and cheerful as always. Margaret had retired and been living a leisurely life since losing her husband 3 years ago. She lived alone in a house in the Seattle suburbs, but she and Emily and Jacob kept in frequent contact and often spent weekends together. "How about this weekend? Lisa's coming too, so why don't we all have a barbecue?" Her sister Lisa was a single mother with twin daughters. She worked part-time in an office job while living near their mother Margaret in the neighborhood. Having struggled through hardships, she sometimes showed a mature composure. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Jacob can play with his cousins too," Emily replied. Lisa's twin daughters, Sophia and Olivia, were 5 years old and like adorable little sisters to Jacob. "Grandma." Jacob looked up at his mother with interest. Emily moved the phone away from her mouth and explained, "Grandma is suggesting we have a barbecue this weekend." "Yay! I get to see Sophia and Olivia." Jacob jumped up with joy. "Margaret, Jacob is so excited. We'll come over Saturday afternoon. I'm looking forward to it. Lisa will bring the girls too, so it's going to be lively." After hanging up, Emily felt warm inside watching her sons smile. Since losing her husband, she felt that the family bonds had grown even deeper. Margaret in particular constantly supported Emily in balancing work and child rearing, and was a loving grandmother to Jacob. In the car on her way to work, Emily thought about the project she was currently working on. She had been entrusted with designing a new nursing home in the city, putting her energy into creating spaces where elderly people could live comfortably. Her reputation as an architect was high, and she was respected by her colleagues. However, behind her success, she always carried guilt. She constantly struggled between wanting to spend more time with Jacob and her desire to build her career. In the evening, when she picked up Jacob after his piano lesson, he was humming the new song he had learned, full of excitement. "Mom, when we go to Grandma's house, can I play for everyone?" "Of course. Grandma and Lisa will be so pleased." That night, as she tucked Jacob into bed, Emily held his small hand. "Mom, we're happy, aren't we?" Jacob murmured in a sleepy voice. "Yes, we're very happy," Emily kissed her son's cheek. Indeed, they were happy. Her beloved son, her supportive mother, her kind sister. And her own career was going well too. Emily sincerely wished that this peaceful daily life would continue forever. As the weekend barbecue day approached, Jacob became increasingly excited. For him, time spent at his grandmother's house was special. Playing in the large yard with his cousins, eating Margaret's homemade cookies, and the warm times when the whole family was together. It was a place of comfort for him, having lost his father. Emily also treasured the time at her mother's house. Margaret seemed to have deepened her affection for Emily and Jacob even more after her son's death. She was especially gentle with Jacob, genuinely delighting in his growth. Saturday morning, Emily woke up leisurely for the first time in a while. Outside the window, birds were chirping, and a peaceful weekend morning had arrived in Seattle. Jacob was still sleeping, but just looking at his sleeping face warmed Emily's heart. "Mom, we're going to Grandma's house today, right?" When Jacob woke up, the first thing he did was confirm the day's plans. His eyes sparkled with anticipation. "That's right. We're planning to leave around noon, so let's eat breakfast and get ready." Emily gently kissed her son's cheek and headed to the kitchen together. Today was the day for the barbecue at Margaret's house. Lisa was also planning to bring her twin daughters, and it would be a rare occasion for the whole family to gather. Just after noon, Emily and Jacob drove to Margaret's house. Her mother's house in the Seattle suburbs was a single-family home that her late father had left them, with a large yard and a fine two-story structure. When they parked in the driveway, Lisa's car had already arrived. "Emily. Jacob." Margaret greeted them with a smile from the front door. Her mother, with her gray hair neatly arranged, looked wonderful in her apron. "Grandma." Jacob ran over and hugged his grandmother. "My, you've grown even bigger." Sophia and Olivia are waiting in the backyard. When they entered the living room, Lisa was sitting on the sofa with her twin daughters. Her sister had acquired the strength of motherhood. "Good work." Lisa stood up and hugged Emily. "Hello, Jacob." "Hello, Aunt Lisa." "Sophia, Olivia, how have you been?" The twins laughed shyly and ran after Jacob into the backyard. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the house, making Emily feel happy. "It's such nice weather today." "Perfect for a barbecue," Margaret said, looking out the window. For several hours that afternoon, the family enjoyed a pleasant time in the yard. Margaret's expertly made hamburgers and hot dogs, the salad Lisa brought, and Emily's homemade brownies for dessert. The children ran around the yard while the adults enjoyed a rare family gathering. "Jacob, would you play that new piano piece for us?" Margaret called to her grandson. "Yes." Jacob happily ran into the house and sat at the piano in the living room. He began playing "For Elise," which he had recently learned. Though not yet perfect, it was beautiful enough for a 7-year-old to play, and the whole family was moved. "That was wonderful. If your daddy were alive, he would be so proud," Margaret said with tears in her eyes. "He really is talented in music," Lisa also praised while clapping. As evening approached, the children had grown tired and quieter. Sophia and Olivia were watching TV on the living room sofa, and Jacob was alone in his father's study on the second floor, reading a book. It was still a special place where memories of his late father remained, and Jacob sometimes spent quiet time there. "Sister, shall I make some coffee?" Lisa called from the kitchen. "Thank you. I'll help too." Emily was about to get up when Margaret gently pulled her arm. "Emily, I need to talk to you. Shall we take a little walk in the garden?" Her mother's expression was somewhat serious.
"Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious."
Emily, feeling puzzled, went out to the backyard with Margaret. "You seem busy with work lately. Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm a bit busy because I've been entrusted with a big project, but it's rewarding." "I'm worried about Jacob." Margaret turned around and looked into Emily's eyes. "That child seems to be growing up a bit too fast lately." "Do you think so?" Emily frowned. "Maybe he's being considerate of you because he doesn't have a father. Don't you think it would be better to let him be more childlike?" Emily was somewhat confused by her mother's words. Jacob was certainly more composed than other children his age, but she thought that was just his personality. "Am I doing something wrong?" "No, not at all. I just think you should leave him with me sometimes and take time for yourself." While the two were talking in the garden, silence continued inside the house. Lisa was making coffee in the kitchen, occasionally glancing toward the second floor. The twin daughters were absorbed in anime in the living room, enjoying a quiet afternoon moment. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a loud sound suddenly echoed throughout the house. Following what sounded like something tumbling down the stairs, a dull impact could be heard. What was that sound? Just as Emily turned around from the garden, Lisa's scream could be heard. Jacob! Emily and Margaret rushed into the house in a panic. At the bottom of the stairs, Jacob lay unconscious. Blood was flowing from his head, and his face had turned pale. Jacob! Jacob! Emily knelt beside her son, calling his name. Don't move him. I'll call an ambulance. Lisa said in a trembling voice, already holding her cell phone. Margaret looked up at the stairs and murmured, "The handrail is broken." Indeed, part of the handrail on the second floor had come loose, and it was clear that Jacob had fallen from there. The 10 minutes until the ambulance arrived felt like an eternity to Emily. She held her son's hand and kept calling his name. Jacob occasionally made small groaning sounds, but he didn't regain consciousness. "It's okay, Jacob. Mommy is here," Emily said through tears, placing her hand on her son's forehead. When the paramedics arrived, Jacob was carefully placed on a stretcher. Emily rode in the ambulance, while Margaret and Lisa were to follow by car to the hospital. "He's being taken to Seattle General Hospital Emergency Department," the paramedic explained to Emily. "There's a possibility of head trauma, so a CT scan will be necessary." When they arrived at the hospital, Jacob was immediately taken to the emergency treatment room. Emily was instructed to wait in the hallway and sat alone in a chair. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was pounding violently. 30 minutes later, a doctor appeared. "Mrs. Hartwell, let me explain your son's condition." The doctor's expression was serious. "He has severe head trauma with swelling in the brain. We're currently treating him in the intensive care unit, but the next 24 hours are very critical." Emily's legs gave out. The doctor's words echoed in her head, but it didn't feel real. "Is his life in danger?" Emily asked in a trembling voice. "To be honest, the situation is touch and go. We'll do our best, but you should prepare yourself." At that moment, Emily's world collapsed. Just a few hours ago, they had been enjoying happy family time. Jacob was playing piano, and everyone was smiling. Now her son was hovering between life and death. When Margaret and Lisa arrived at the hospital, Emily was sitting alone outside the intensive care unit. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her whole body was shaking. "Emily," Margaret hugged her daughter. "It's okay, Jacob is a strong boy." However, Emily wasn't listening to her mother's words. The doctor's words kept echoing in her head. "Touch and go situation, prepare yourself." That night, Emily would spend it at the hospital. The intensive care unit at midnight was wrapped in silence. Only the regular sound of machines echoed as proof of life. Emily sat in a chair placed next to her son's bed, holding Jacob's small hand. His face had an oxygen mask attached, and his head was wrapped in bandages. The doctor's words kept repeating in her head. "The next 24 hours are very critical. Please, Jacob. Can you hear Mommy's voice? Wake up," Emily whispered, pressing her cheek against her son's hand. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her voice was hoarse. The hospital staff understood that Emily wouldn't leave her son's side. Nurses came to check on them regularly and offered coffee and light snacks, but Emily wouldn't accept anything. Her world existed only within this small intensive care unit. After 2 o'clock in the morning, her cell phone rang. Emily hurried to silence it, but when she looked at the screen, it displayed "Mom." It was a call from Margaret. Emily hesitated but thought there might be some news about her son's condition, so she went into the hallway and answered the phone. "Mom? What's wrong, calling at this hour?" "Emily, you're awake. How is Jacob?" Margaret's voice was surprisingly calm. No change. He still hasn't regained consciousness. The doctor said the next 24 hours are crucial. Emily's voice was shaking. I see, that is worrying, Margaret answered briefly. Then she suddenly changed the subject. By the way, Emily, about tomorrow. Tomorrow? Emily was confused. She had no mental space to think about tomorrow. Did you forget? Tomorrow is Lisa's birthday. The preparations are already underway. Relatives are coming too, and I've already ordered the cake. Emily couldn't believe her ears. In this situation where her son was hovering between life and death, was she talking about a birthday party? Mom, now is not the time to talk about such things, is it? Jacob is. I'm worried about Jacob, but Lisa's birthday comes only once a year. She's really looking forward to it. I want you to help with the decorations, and there's meal preparation too. Emily was speechless. She couldn't understand her mother's priorities. Mom, my son is in the intensive care unit. The doctor said his life is in danger. How can you think about a birthday party? Emily, you being at the hospital won't make Jacob's condition better, will it? Leave it to the doctors, and sometimes you need a change of pace too. Besides, family solidarity is important at times like this. A change of pace. Emily's voice rose. My son is dying, and you talk about a change of pace. Don't say such unlucky things. Jacob is a strong boy, he'll surely be fine. Margaret's voice had an unnaturally optimistic tone. Anyway, please come to the house at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. There's a lot of preparation to do. Emily couldn't believe it. She felt that her mother was trivializing her son's critical situation. Mom, I have no intention of leaving my son's side. I can't even think about a birthday party right now. On the other end of the phone, Margaret's tone changed. From the gentle tone up until then, it changed to a cold, hard manner of speaking. Emily, there's something called family responsibility. Lisa is raising twins alone as a mother, yet you're only thinking about yourself. Only thinking about myself? Emily was appalled. Does worrying about my son's life mean I'm only thinking about myself? Lisa's birthday comes only once a year. Without you, the party will be ruined. The relatives are also looking forward to seeing you. Emily took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. Mom, please understand. Right now, I can't think about anything other than Jacob. I'm sorry to Lisa, but couldn't we postpone the birthday? Postpone? Margaret's voice suddenly became sharp. Absolutely not. All the preparations are complete, and the relatives have made arrangements too. Do you intend to ruin everyone's plans for your own convenience? My own convenience? Emily was beginning to feel angry. My son's life being in danger is my own convenience. Emily, you've always had a self-centered side, but this time you're going too far. Value your family bonds. Emily was deeply hurt by her mother's words. She couldn't understand being called self-centered. Mom, I treasure my family, which is exactly why I'm staying by my son's side. Why can't you understand that? You're the one who can't understand. How much Lisa is looking forward to this, how much the relatives have prepared. You're not thinking about such things at all. Emily's mind was in turmoil. She couldn't understand her mother's logic at all. In this situation where her son's life was in danger, why did she have to prioritize a birthday party? Mom, I'll say it once more, but I have no intention of leaving my son's side. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then, when Margaret spoke, her voice was as cold as ice. Emily, listen carefully. If you don't come to tomorrow's party, I won't recognize you as my daughter. I don't want to be involved with someone who doesn't fulfill their family responsibilities. Emily couldn't believe her ears. What did you say? You heard me. If you don't come, I'll cut ties with you, Margaret's voice had no trace of warmth. Make it clear whether you choose your family or your own selfishness. Emily was at a loss for words. She couldn't believe her mother was seriously saying such things. Mom, are you serious? My son is on the brink of life and death, and you're talking about cutting ties. I'm serious. I value family unity above all else. I can't continue a relationship with someone who can't understand that, even if we're blood related. Tears overflowed from Emily's eyes. They were tears not just of sadness, but of anger and disappointment. I understand, Mom. Emily's voice was shaking but filled with determination. I never knew you were this kind of person. Emily, you still have time to reconsider. Give me your answer by tomorrow morning. I'll give you my answer now. Emily took a deep breath. I'm staying by my son's side. If that's unacceptable to you, so be it. Are you really okay with that? Don't come to me with regrets later. I won't have any regrets. I'm a mother. Protecting my child is a mother's duty, isn't it? You can't understand that. On the other end of the phone, Margaret laughed coldly. That's your choice. Goodbye, Emily. The call ended. Emily stared at her cell phone, unable to accept reality for a while. Had her mother really said she would cut ties? In this situation where her son was dying? Dominated by mixed emotions of anger and sadness, Emily deleted her mother's number from her phone's contacts. Her fingers were shaking, but she had no hesitation. If this was her mother's true nature, she didn't want to be involved with such a person. When she returned to the intensive care unit, Jacob was still sleeping unchanged. Emily took her son's hand again and gently kissed his forehead. Jacob, Mommy is here. No one else can come between us. That night, Emily continued to watch over her son alone. She had lost the support of her mother and sister, but she was confident in her choice. She learned painfully that night what true love was, what true family was. There were people who understood and people who didn't. In the silence where only the sound of machines echoed, Emily continued to pray for her son's recovery. Sunday evening, the intensive care unit at Seattle General Hospital was still wrapped in silence. Emily was about to spend her second night beside her son's bed. Since the phone call with her mother last night, she hadn't contacted anyone. There had been no calls from Margaret or Lisa expressing concern about her son's condition. Mrs. Hartwell, the attending physician Dr. Chen, entered the treatment room. I have good news. Your son's brain pressure is decreasing. His consciousness level is also showing signs of improvement. A light of hope shone in Emily's heart. Really? Yes. We still can't let our guard down, but at this rate, he might regain consciousness soon. I think your constant presence has had a positive effect too. After the doctor left, Emily gripped her son's hand more tightly. Did you hear that, Jacob? The doctor said you're getting better. Hang in there, wake up. Around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Jacob's finger moved slightly. Emily held her breath and watched. Then, slowly, her son's eyelids opened. Jacob. Emily called her son's name through tears. Jacob couldn't understand his surroundings at first, but when he saw his mother's face, he showed a relieved expression. However, as if remembering something, he suddenly showed an expression of fear. Mom. Jacob's voice was small and trembling. It's okay, Jacob. Mommy is here. You're safe now. Emily gently stroked her son's cheek. Mom, when I fell down the stairs. Jacob started to say and began trembling with fear. Calm down. What do you remember? Emily spoke gently to reassure her son. The handrail didn't just break suddenly. Jacob's eyes filled with tears. Grandma and Aunt Lisa. Emily's heart began pounding violently. What? What about Grandma and Aunt Lisa? Jacob looked directly into his mother's face and continued in a trembling voice. When I was reading a book in the study on the second floor, I heard Grandma and Aunt Lisa's voices from downstairs. I think they didn't know I was there. What were they talking about? Emily's voice was also trembling. Grandma said, "Soon Emily and Jacob won't be in the way anymore." Aunt Lisa also said, "If Emily is gone, Mom will love only us twins." Emily gasped. She couldn't believe her son's words. Then Aunt Lisa asked, "Is the handrail ready?" and Grandma answered, "Perfect." That child has a habit of always putting weight on the handrail when coming down from the second floor. Emily's blood ran cold. What her son was describing suggested not a mere accident, but a planned crime. "Jacob, did you really hear such a conversation?" "Yes. I got scared and tried to come down from upstairs. But the moment I put my hand on the handrail, it came loose." Large tears spilled from Jacob's eyes. "Were Grandma and them trying to kill me?" Emily hugged her son. She herself couldn't stop shaking. Her mother and sister had intentionally tried to hurt her son. "Mommy will protect you. You're safe now," Emily comforted her son while recalling her mother's cold attitude during last night's phone call. The unnatural calmness right after her son's accident, the abnormal obsession with the birthday party, and the threat to cut ties. Everything was beginning to connect. "Mom, we're not going to Grandma's house anymore, right?" Jacob asked anxiously. "Never again. I promise," Emily kissed her son's forehead. That night, Emily stood in the hospital corridor clutching her cell phone. She was wondering whether she should report to the police. Her son's testimony alone might not be sufficient evidence. However, she made her decision. Seattle Police Department. "My son was in an accident falling downstairs, but there's a possibility it was intentional." The next morning, 2 detectives came to see Emily. After hearing Jacob's testimony, they decided to begin investigating it as a case. "Ma'am, based on your son's testimony, we'll examine the scene. We'll also conduct interviews with related parties," the older detective explained. That afternoon, a scene investigation was conducted at Margaret's house. When forensics examined the stair handrail, they discovered traces that the metal fittings supporting the handrail had been loosened beforehand. It wasn't something that came loose naturally, but had been intentionally tampered with. "This is clearly man-made," the forensics officer reported. "It was loosened little by little over a long period, designed to come off when a certain weight was applied." Margaret and Lisa were called to the police station. At first, both insisted it was an accident, but when confronted with physical evidence and her son's detailed testimony, Lisa was the first to speak. "It wasn't me. Mom planned everything." Lisa screamed through tears. "Mom hated Emily and Jacob and told me to cooperate." "Don't lie," Margaret answered coldly. "You were the one who first said, 'Emily is in the way.' But you were the one who actually tampered with the handrail." "I just watched." The two blamed each other, and the truth became clear. Margaret was jealous of her eldest daughter Emily's success and the love for her grandson Jacob. Meanwhile, Lisa resented that her twin daughters weren't receiving enough affection from their grandmother. Their jealousy and hatred combined to form a plan to eliminate Jacob, thereby causing Emily to have a mental breakdown and change her position within the family. "At first, I only intended to threaten," Margaret stated during interrogation. "I thought if I gave him a minor injury, Emily would come to rely more on her family." "But Mom said, 'Make it more certain,'" Lisa countered. "The more Emily suffered, the more our value would increase." As their cold-hearted plan became clear, Emily was watching the news with Jacob at the hospital. "Mom, are we safe now?" Jacob asked, snuggling up to his mother. "We're safe. No one can hurt you anymore," Emily hugged her son. That evening, the attending physician gave permission for discharge. Jacob's recovery was going smoothly, and home care was now possible. "A new life is beginning now," Emily murmured, looking outside with her son through the hospital window. Yes. But I'm not scared because I'm with Mom, Jacob smiled. Emily thought while holding her son's hand. Blood relation alone doesn't make a family. True affection and trust create real family. Though there was sadness in losing her mother and sister, the relief of being able to protect her son was greater. 6 months later, the courtroom of Seattle District Court was wrapped in silence. The trial of Margaret Hartwell and Lisa Hartwell was coming to an end. Emily sat in the front row of the gallery, waiting for the verdict. Next to her sat Jacob, who had fully recovered, though he seemed a little nervous in the solemn atmosphere of the courtroom. I sentenced defendant Margaret Hartwell to 8 years imprisonment for attempted murder. I sentenced defendant Lisa Hartwell to 6 years imprisonment for the same crime. The moment the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom, Emily let out a deep sigh. It was a complex mix of relief that justice had been served and sadness at losing family. In the defendant's dock, Margaret and Lisa showed completely different reactions. Margaret maintained a resolute attitude to the end, claiming in court that, "I only acted for my family." Meanwhile, Lisa broke down crying, repeatedly shouting, "I was deceived by Mom." After sentencing, the two would be sent to separate prisons. Emily had the opportunity to meet with them one last time, but she declined. She no longer wanted to be involved with them. "Mom, is this really the end?" Jacob asked, holding his mother's hand outside the courthouse. "Yes. No one can hurt us anymore," Emily hugged her son. That afternoon, the two headed to their new home. Emily had purchased a house in a quiet residential area in the Seattle suburbs after the incident. It was to start a new life with her son, away from old memories. The new house was smaller than their previous condo, but it was a single-family home with a yard, and Jacob really liked it. Children his age lived in the neighborhood, and he was able to make friends quickly. "Emily, I came to help with the move," neighbor Sarah Johnson appeared with a smile. A kind woman in her 50s, she had been helpful since the day Emily and Jacob moved in. Having experience raising a daughter as a single mother herself, she had become a reassuring presence for Emily. "Thank you, Sarah. You're really helping me out." "Family isn't just about blood relations," Sarah placed her hand on Emily's shoulder. "People like us who support each other can become family too." That night, Emily and Jacob had dinner at their new dining table. The table was filled with homemade dishes that neighbors had brought them. "Mom, we're happy, aren't we?" Jacob said with a smile. "We really are. This time, we seem to have found true happiness." A year later, Margaret and Lisa were spending completely different days in prison. Margaret frequently got into trouble with other inmates and spent much of her time in solitary confinement. She still justified her actions and complained to those around her that, "Emily betrayed me." Meanwhile, Lisa became mentally unstable in prison and harbored growing resentment toward her mother. She repeatedly screamed, "Mom deceived me," and, "It's all Mom's fault," requiring counseling. A deep rift formed between the two, and they refused even to see each other during visiting hours. Around the same time, Emily and Jacob attended a Christmas party held at the local community center. Jacob played "Jingle Bells" on the piano and received big applause from the gathered people. "That was a wonderful performance, Jacob," a neighborhood elderly man said, patting his head. "Thank you, Grandpa," Jacob answered happily. Emily felt truly happy watching her son's growth. The pain of being betrayed by blood family would never disappear, but the bonds with people she met in the new community brought even greater warmth. "Emily, we're planning a community picnic next summer. Could Jacob play piano for us?" Sarah suggested. "I'd be delighted. I think Jacob would look forward to it too." That night, mother and son sat together under the Christmas tree. The tree was decorated with many ornaments they had received from new friends. "Mom, next year will be an even better year, won't it?" Jacob said, snuggling up to his mother. "I'm sure it will be. A wonderful future awaits us, Emily hugged her son while looking at the snowy landscape outside the window. For the two who had learned what true family means, the future was full of hope. A new life with people bound not by blood ties but by true affection and trust was just beginning.